Hello. We are the Savvy Spiritual Sisters, the Yogi, the Mystic, and the Priestess, where we engage in rich discussions on life, spirituality, and wellness according to our unique perspectives. Hi, my name is Lisa, and I'm the Priestess.
My name is Mina, and I'm the Yogi.
And I'm Amber, the Mystic.
So Amber brought up a topic for us to discuss today, and Amber, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, so I was thinking about what I would like to talk to these beautiful women about today, my sisters, and what would be beneficial to the collective that will come to this conversation upon recording. And I know that each one of us here, as well as each one of you, have an enormous amount and have had an enormous amount of personal challenge in love relationship. You do not come to the third dimension and not, especially as service to others' souls, you cannot come here, be here, without having enormous challenge to your love relationships. It's just part of the agreement we make to come here in this lifetime. Hopefully that provides some comfort to everyone on this conversation today. So I wanted to really talk about that, break it down a little bit, and then talk about some strategies from a spiritual perspective about how to work within that tension in order to reduce suffering, to increase joy, and increase perspective, frankly. So that's where I'd like to take the conversation today. All that said, I want to come back to you, Lisa, to get your take on what you're hearing from me.
Well, I tend to agree with you because my observation in my personal life, especially, but also in the lives of others, is I really think that people are brought together for a multitude of reasons, and ultimately, I think those reasons have to do with sort of being able to look in the sacred mirror of the other as ourselves and learn what our triggers are, the places that are crying out for healing or acknowledgement, and to find the ways to work through those.
I think that's exactly right. Mina, when you hear us, what comes to mind about love relationship and that predominant feature of having a human path, human walk?
Sure. So the biggest thing that comes up, like right off the bat, is that their love relationships come with shitloads of expectations that nobody can possibly meet, and we set ourselves up for suffering when we have these expectations of other human beings. And there's going to be disappointments, there's going to be fears, there's going to be issues around vulnerability when we get into a relationship, and we put all these expectations on another person. Society puts these expectations on us as individuals and us as couples to do certain things, that it has to be a certain way. Hollywood has just shit tons of expectations of what a relationship is supposed to be like, and none of it's real. The fact of the matter is that the minute we put expectations on the table, we set ourselves up for disappointment. And getting rid of those expectations and realizing that our partner is a fallible human being sets us up for success. Because then we realize, this person is a person. They're not perfect. There is no such thing as perfection. We realize that, and then we can navigate these disappointments and fears and vulnerability issues and other things that come up with more grace and understanding and compassion.
And that's what I'm hearing you say, is that to take the path of forgiveness, to take the path of kindness, to take the path of compassion, empathy. That's sort of the baseline for anyone walking a spiritual path.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you will get those tucked into your retinue of functioning every day, you're going to watch your well-being quotient climb. You'll also, because of the resonance, the vibratory resonance and frequency from a quantum physics perspective in the quantum field, you're going to watch the conditions around you shapeshift to rise to that vibration. But it takes an enormous amount of self-responsibility to do that. It's deceptive. The words are deceptive, right? They sound like, oh, I just need to do this. You know, love and light, light and love and light. And it's not exactly just like that. But I do want to say this too, before I turn it towards Lisa on this. You know, we will suggest that the culture expects of us. We will suggest that he or she, our loved one, expects from us, you know, or that we have expectations, you know, that affect other. In my world, and in my background, and in my teaching, those things are us. And the word, you used, Nina, the word reality, about what's real. In the cosmos, in the galactic framework, and the law of one, there is only love. Love is the only construct that we need to concern ourselves with. There is, you know, I think that that's sort of a great place to start, is going back to love. And we'll talk more about that, I think, as it goes by. So Lisa, when you work with clients who have, you know, primary love pain, difficulty with mates, in your own relationship structures, you know, in the challenges, what is it you like to sort of remember, or, you know, step back and function, shift yourself within? Because we all get caught up. I mean, it's natural to get caught up.
Well, you know, I'm going to go back to what you guys have been talking about with expectations, and, you know, society, or the matrix, as we sometimes think of it as, is, you know, it really puts a lot of constructs and expectations about what love is supposed to be. It's got like, and I've even heard of it spoken this way, there's like a relationship escalator, and you do this step, and then you do that for a while, and then maybe the next step, and so on. And then, you know, eventually it's kind of supposed to lead to marriage, and marriage, you know, is supposed to be the ultimate. But for a lot of us, we do that thing and we think that's what I want. And, you know, we're sort of programmed that we're supposed to have the one, and we're supposed to be in love and do the relationship escalator, and then we get married, and then like, and you know, whether it's the Cinderella or the Snow White stories or whatever, they lived happily ever after. They never show you what that means or what that is, but then you get there and you're like, what, this is it, you know? And that was, I mean, that was my experience, falling in love and getting married and doing all of that. Of course, I haven't been married for quite some time, but I've learned so much in my process having come out of that. And part of it is people become complacent. And so complacency can't be an option. You can't get too comfortable, or you can't be so afraid to bring up something that's uncomfortable or difficult or tense. You got to be able to have conversation. And then there's all these expectations of, well, it's supposed to be like this or like that. And whatever those expectations are can be incredibly confining and limiting. And if we can continue to let go of those expectations, not always easy, being like, that's a literal act that you have to take, like breathing in every moment. But when you can let go of those and just be with what is, Venus words reality, and celebrate what is and have gratitude for what is, and kind of allow the discomfort of not knowing and let things evolve in a natural way, then maybe in that case, the universe has higher, better plans for you in your relationship than maybe you had in your own mind or, you know, than what your expectations were to begin with.
Well, and I think that Lisa, Nina, we can shift into some of this conversation about soul contracts and, you know, you are me, I am you. In other words, I think the more we decide, well, maybe we can talk about it from a victimization standpoint. I mean, how often have you said, and I have too, I've been guilty of it, oh, he did that to me, you know, or she did that to me, or, you know, they did that. And now in other words, I'm suffering. I've been victimized in this relationship. Okay. It's really human to sort of continually feed the construct of suffering, of challenge, of that's you, this is me. There's you, and then there's me, the construct of separation. Using the mechanism and the vibratory resonance and frequency, okay, because everything has it, of I'm a victim of you. You know, you did that and now I feel this way. That creates complacency. You don't grow and you just suffer, right?
Yeah, because you're not taking responsibility for your own responses or reactions or feelings.
Your own choices. Nina,
Yeah.
I guess we've seen that a lot, you know, in our lives. We see that a lot around us and have that experience in our own lives.
Yeah, and you know, the thing about the whole victim persona archetype is we allow ourselves to get caught up in that and go down that path instead of what I've learned, because I spent 8 years in a relationship going in circles with that whole thing. And now instead of jumping into the victim role, I sit back and I'm like, what is this mirror reflecting on me?
Yeah.
And I have actually journaled when I've been pissed about something. What's the mirror here? And then when I sit down to start writing, I'm like, okay, that's all me. That's me. That's not anybody else but me and my triggers and what's being held and stored in my body and my psyche. And when I realize that, it all dissipates. It all just goes away. And again, it's not simple or easy to do that by any means, but sitting down and being present and just taking that time for a little bit of self-analysis and self-study can make a huge impact on these kinds of issues.
Yeah, so, and when you're talking about that, like sort of almost taking like a personal inventory, like, well, what is this that's bothering me? It, you know, it's so much like, for me, this is where my little voice in my head lies. That's like, well, he's doing this or that's happening or blah, blah, blah. And it's making up all these stories. It's putting meaning behind things that probably doesn't even exist except right here in my brain. And I'm trying to like construct all this meaning and read into stuff that probably is just completely irrelevant or doesn't exist in the first place. And yes, so that is totally my own shit.
Yeah. And the thing too is, if we can just take a moment and pause and put some space between what that voice is saying and the reaction that comes out of us, some space, that reaction might not ever happen. And I know that just sitting back and just being like, okay, before I react, before I speak, before I get mad, before I do whatever, that space creates so much grace for us to flow in. And so, you know, our knee-jerk reaction is to snap right back when something happens, and that's just human nature. But if we can just take a breath and pause and create space, what a huge gift that is for us.
I definitely have learned over the years to, from that take a pause, because because I want to like react. What I will do is get in witness mode, which I stay in more in my daily life anyway, the role of the witness.
Mm-hmm.
It's the classic be in the world, not of it. You know, let my soul self, my spirit self do most of the movement throughout the day. And then my little skin suit body over here, you know, chop wood, carry water. But I let the other aspects of myself sort of flow me. And so I've become a much better witness to you and to my, you know, to my mate. So he comes in with, you know, some bluster, some flurry, something that's coming my way, as opposed to me explaining it, as opposed to me deciding that it actually is true what's being put back to me. You know, instead of that reaction, that defensive posture, I have this perspective of, that's interesting. Inside myself, I get into sort of curiosity, like, I'm like, okay, what is he saying? What's he talking about? What's he really communicating to me? I guess I must slow the, so in energy, you know, we have frequency and wavelength. So here's, you know, a line of energy. And it's, you know, there's amplitude, you know, pitch, right? So instead of just responding with a big pitch, I kind of keep it down here. Mm-hmm. And I do it by controlling that the trigger. Mm-hmm. I take control of that. I take responsibility for my own trigger behavior, which is definitely a neural transmitter, amygdala related experience, neurologic, right? Animal experience. But I have learned how to insert myself into that. And that's an art. And it takes practice, and it takes managing two things. And I said this last time with us, managing thoughts and managing emotions. Becoming an emotional and thought manager every day. Going, what am I thinking about? Where is my head space? Where's my heart space? Maybe I should go over there and look at that little box of flowers for a few more minutes. Put my attention where I want it to be. Take it away from where I don't want it to be. That's been really helpful.
But I think, you know, when it comes to like those voices in our head and all those constructs and everything, like, I mean, we're so programmed around that. And then, you know, somebody does something that doesn't, you know, align with what our expectation or whatever is. And then we find all those like chemical and physiological responses. Like, I mean, that's a huge wake up, right? It's like, oh, I just had a flush of adrenaline. What's that about? You know, what am I, you know, why is my body perceiving whatever this other person just did as threatening, right? Or unsafety, and, you know, maybe certainly in some cases, there is a lack of safety. Maybe it's physical safety, maybe it's emotional safety. And sometimes that's a true, real thing. But I think in so many cases, you know, we've got so much fear programming that, you know, our body just does this kind of physiological response that is like, oh shit, and goes into fight or flight. So that awareness and taking those moments to just pause, breathe, notice, witness, and then be like, okay, what now how do I want to, you know, respond to that or what have you, you know?
I want to take that a little bit deeper, because I think this is something that is so healthy for our community to understand, because you just said something really key there, Lisa. What I know from my psychological health background is that if there has been original wounding in childhood, say sexual trauma or emotional trauma of any kind, any of that physical trauma, certainly this would be, you know, we could expand this into what we call past lives and all that kind of stuff, and karmic patterning, but those are other conversations and other shows, right? But in this case, what we know and what the science knows is that we tend to attract the same. If we've had these early traumas, they're in our energy field. Mm-hmm. The thought process has been established, the emotional condition has been established, And we will go forward and unless we interrupt that thought field, that energy field, that emotional field with healing work, we're going to go on and keep inviting the same. That's why you see highly traumatized people. But for the grace of God go I, and each of you. That's what the miracle is. When you start getting involved with soul and spirit and so forth, you begin to heal all of that, such that the quality and nature of your other relationships, you begin to attract the law of attraction. And we see bringing that in. You start to energetically attract. Like attracts like. I'm looking at two like sisters here. There's no accident that happened. We have a very similar vibratory resonance and frequency and platform in the quantum field. I know, right? We can feel that. We get goosebumps. We can feel our connection. But we could only have found each other in this particular lifetime if we had each, in our own field and form, moved into an energetic receptivity. That meant letting go of a lot of and having healed internally. That's why any of the sages, any of the spiritual teachers, bygone and today, everybody has some form of saying, do your work. This is Earth School. Do the work. Do your healing. Not about anybody else here. So you can then begin to attract the quality and the nature of more of the fullness of the next levels of your life that are not about suffering, that are not about drama and conflict, that are not about abuse and victimization.
Yeah, that's great stuff, Amber. And something that came up when you were talking about that is that, everything in this universe is an expansion and a contraction. Everything is. And so relationships are going to have an expansion and contraction. The universe is constantly expanding and contracting because you can't have both. If something keeps contracting, it's going to die. If something keeps expanding, it's going to explode. And so relationships are the same. There's going to be expansion and then there's going to be contraction. And the goal is for me, to find some level of balance there, or understanding this is a contraction phase because it has to be that way. Maybe it keeps contracting and then dies, or maybe it's taking a break and resting so it can open up and expand in other ways. And I think a lot of us, I definitely used to be this way. I'm not anymore, where it's like you get into an argument, it's like, oh, that's it, it's over, done, have to run away, and it's like, it was just an argument. That's a contraction. That's going to happen. There's no way in this world you can not ever have a disagreement in a relationship. There's just no way. It's going to happen. And so I think if we understand this contraction, expansion, that's happening in everything all the time, it happens in our breath. Every time we take a breath, there's a contraction and expansion. That gives us a little bit to work with, where a greater understanding of this is okay right now. That's the way it's supposed to be. And things will expand. And if they don't, then that's when I take a step and make some decisions and start to look at things in maybe a deeper way.
Yeah, I like that. I like that construct of expand and the use of breath. So we're going back, and so much of our teachings say to go back to the breath.
Always, yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of as a point of reference for what's going on. Man, I love that. I'm going to keep that in mind about the expansion and contraction.
Yeah, that's a natural law, and it makes so much sense. And Nina mentioned, when you get into an argument, like in these days, like in our society, everything is so disposable. So like you get into an argument and, you know, you like everything gets really wrapped up in this argument or whatever, and then people are like, well, you don't have to put up with that stuff. Like you can just tell him to walk on, or, you know, that kind of thing. And well, no, like actually, if you really value your relationships or whatever, then you find the ways to, you know, to navigate, work through that. And, you know, but I think that's part of that fight or flight thing, because so many people are just ready to just bag something at the first sign of trouble. And, you know, if you did that, you wouldn't have anything of quality or depth in your life. And then it also made me think of something else too. And this is kind of a more recent sort of embodiment type of understanding for me, is that sometimes when people are in relationship and they're acting out, you know, we can take that very personally. And we, you know, we take that and we make it about us. But what I've really seen more and more is when somebody's in a relationship and they're acting out, it doesn't really have, it's not a real personal bearing on ourselves. It's about some kind of pain, shame, guilt, fear, issue, whatever that other person is having. And so if you can keep that in mind and sort of try to be with them through that process, and be, you know, and help them to see, well, like, why, you know, they're really hurting themselves. And you may feel it because you have that connection, and, you know, many of us are empathic and it seems like it's about us, but really it's so much about them and whatever pain or issue or something that they're undergoing. And so if you can kind of help to be with them through that process, then that's where you're applying that compassion and you're applying love and understanding, and you don't have to just walk away or bag it and get out. I mean, depending on, of course, on circumstances and history or whatever, that it's helpful to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're, oh, yeah, Mina.
Well, and that comes back to, I think, creating that space again. Creating that space of, okay, that's their stuff. I don't need to react to it, but I can bear sacred witness to it. I can witness, I can observe, I can offer compassion, I can offer love. I don't necessarily want to offer a fix, because that may not be what that person's looking for or needs. And that's not my job to fix stuff anyway. So, but being that witness and observing, and if that person asks for help, being available and offering what you can, then that's what you do.
I think we're at the phase where it's good to kind of go around the room and talk about the takeaway that we'd like people to have from this conversation from our particular perspectives. And as a mystic, what I'm going to ask our viewers and ourselves to understand is that from a holographic or matrix life perspective, you are me. He is me, she is me, they are me, I am you. And I intend then to treat you as I'm treating myself, because I do not do unto you what I am not first doing unto me, or think simultaneously. So my self-love and the love of Source mandates that I observe you as me, and I be as gentle and as kind and as loving as I am capable of being. And when I can see the other aspect of myself, you, in pain or in a mode of being hurtful towards me, that is something for me to explore. Obviously, I'm exploring that. It's great to get curious about why I have that in my life today. What is that showing me about who I am in this particular incarnation? What is it mirroring to me? And why am I choosing to continue to explore it? And how would I like to respond to it to heal it for myself? That's sort of the unity consciousness viewpoint that I'm offering. Nina, what would you like to see people do who are struggling with their relationship challenges as we do? What would you like to see us do with our bodies?
Sure. So, to put that space in between your emotions and your reactions, there's a really simple but powerful pranayama or breath work where you breathe in, you take a deep full breath in, you hold it at the top of that inhale. I usually hold it for a count of 4 to 8 depending, and then you exhale and release it all out, and then you hold it for the same amount of time. And then you just keep doing that, breathing in, hold, breathing out, hold. And that little pause, it puts physical space in our bodies, in our breath, between each inhale and exhale, but it creates emotional space. So that emotional space of emotions and reactions, that's that pause in between that we're looking for. Where if we can just stop for that pause, it all just decompresses. And that's one of the most powerful pranayama breath work that I've ever done. And it's just so easy.
Yeah, it interrupts frequency too. It interrupts the amplitude and the rhythm of the actual energetic frequency, because you're controlling it at that point. You're being the wizard that you actually are, master that you are. Lisa, what would you like us to take away from this?
2 things. One thing is the way that I become more self-aware and find that space and kind of hold center amidst everything is because I meditate daily. And that gives me that self-awareness and that ability to notice where the pause can come in and to not have to react. So that's one huge key, I think. And then the other one is when it comes to language and conversation and discussion and difficulty, we talked about original wounding. It comes down to 2 pretty basic things most of the time, and it's wounds that we all carry to some degree or another. And one of those is the fear of abandonment, which can feel like I'm not being safe. And then the other one is the fear of not being seen and appreciated. And what I've noticed is if you are in an argument with somebody, one or both of those is probably what they're really saying. Like if you cut through the top layer, the tip of the iceberg of what's going on in the discussion, and you listen for cues that tell you, are they feeling like they're going to be abandoned, or are they feeling like they're not being seen and appreciated? And then if you can speak to those things and show up in that way, I think it really helps to smooth everything out because people feel understood. And it's like, well, I know you did something that upset me, but I'm not going to leave you, and I love you, and I appreciate these things about you and all that you bring, then, that can go really far. So those are my 2 big things that I would say.
Well, and why don't we leave our conversation with a couple of pieces that show up here. I brought in, when I begin these conversations, I always ask who would like to be with us, usually from the Ascended Master Angelic Realm. I was showing you guys this earlier. And in this case, I think you can see her. This is considered the Holy Spirit card. And she says to expect the unexpected, to expect miracles. So walking around, and if I can say anything about what our cosmic and star family asks of us, and expanded fractal selves asks of us, they ask us to stay excited. They ask us to stay in a state of expectation and a touch of bliss, and to touch into ecstasy throughout the day. So that goes along with that expect miracles. And what I think is really interesting, well, in the Holy Spirit from the Course in Miracles, as written by Marianne Williamson, is that the Holy Spirit is the part of ourselves, our energy systems, individual energy systems that is source. That's the part that's never separated from source or has the perspective of that. And I'm also not missing that Marianne Williamson right now is one of our Democratic or independent candidates for presidency. And I think that the beauty of that is that she represents this knowingness, and she's the divine feminine holding that into that structure. Hardly matters because I don't think she's going to be president. But my point is that she's bringing that expect the unexpected to our, U.S. governmental structures.
Thank you for that. I love that you pull cards every time, and I have so many different card decks, and the ones I think of and go to when it comes to love and romance are my Magdalene Oracle, my Isis Oracle, and my Magdalene Oracle felt like the one today. And so the card I drew is Purgatory, and my light might be a little on the bright side to see that well. But,
what's in the middle of that?
It's just bright white light.
That's what it looks like a big
so yeah,
white light.
It is. So, this card is really about allowing yourself to be in the space you're in, and that even if it doesn't feel like it, you're constantly going through a healing process and a process of learning and enlightenment. And along the way, we have to do that self-inventory, like what Mina was talking about. She journals, and that's so wonderful. For me, I like to do like a check-in. What's going on with me right now? How am I feeling? That personal inventory, and realize whatever your fears and your stories and your meaning making or your reactions are, and maybe figure out, or certainly figure out, like in that personal inventory, what's not serving you. And frankly, for me, it's probably pretty much that whole list, and I need to get rid of it. And so that's part of what the Purgatory card says too, is sometimes you need to relinquish and let go of things. And often it's not the relationship that you need to relinquish and let go of. It's probably something that you're doing or telling yourself, or some way that you're behaving that you need to relinquish and let go of, or that expectation.
Yeah, very, very, very well said. Well, you guys, I think this was a really great bit of time spent together. I think this conversation can be meaningful to anybody who catches us. I certainly love the time together. So I guess we can sign ourselves off. I am Amber Chamberlain, the Mystic.
I'm Nina Habibi, the Yogi.
And my name is Lisa Adams, and I'm the Priestess, and we are the Savvy Spiritual Sisters. Thank you so much for joining us today. We love you, and we'll be back with more.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Take care.